been one of those weeks where lots of little things haven't quite gone the way I thought they should, but life has not been at its best. And it's very easy at times like that to think, well, I must be doing something wrong. It must be all my fault, my mistake, my mess that I've caused. But our reading from 1 Peter talks about the fact that suffering is not necessarily because of what I have done, but actually one of those things that happen sometimes is not our fault. We live in a world which is fallen, and therefore that there is suffering because the world is just messed up at the moment. We're told in Romans that the whole of creation is waiting for the children of God to come into their own, because at that point the undoing of all that happened at the fall will begin to take place. And we've been watching this week, possibly with a bit of horror, about what's been going on in the Bay of Bengal, where a super typhoon has hit the land between Bangladesh and India and caused flooding and all sorts of disasters. Now, that doesn't mean necessarily that the people who are affected have done anything wrong, but it's a result of a fallen world. And we have to be careful not to blame people when things like that happen, but also perhaps to ask the question, what can we do to help and support them? And sometimes suffering is because I've done something wrong, but most of the time suffering happens because we live in a world which is fallen, and also we live in a world where there are people who oppose the things of God, and the main opposition to the people of God is the devil. We see him at work in Jesus' life, where he tries to tempt Jesus and distract him and lead him away. We see the suffering of Jesus on the cross. Was that because he did the wrong thing? No, it's because he was doing the right things, and the people and the powers around them, both human and spiritual, opposed him, and it led him to the cross. And God even took that and turned it into a victory. And so when we suffer, when things aren't going the way we would like, we remember that it's probably not all my fault, and to let God reassure us on that to begin to ask the question of, God, how do I let you work in this and through this? Because it seems to me that the response to suffering is possibly the most important thing. How do I respond to this? How do I let God be in me and through me in the midst of this? And the invitation into 1 Peter is to let God teach us through this discipline, the discipline of loving and worshipping and serving and praising him in the midst of all that goes on, and not letting ourselves get anxious. Well, actually not letting ourselves get anxious, because I don't think that's what it says. It says, cast all your anxiety on him. So it's not that you shouldn't get anxious, but it's, what do I do with my anxiety? Do I let it control me and drag me down, or do I learn to cast it on to Jesus, to pass it over to him, to let him work in those things? Not because he has to, but because he loves to do good things in the lives of his children. So I cast my anxieties upon him, because I know he cares for me, and therefore he's going to work in this and through this. And then I discipline myself, that recognizing that the devil's trying to distract me, disturb me in my faith, to derail me, to divert me from what God has called me to do and to be. And so when suffering comes, it's an invitation to still love and serve God, and to praise him. And that's not always easy. And that's why we need each other sometimes, because we can do that and encourage each other in doing that, to let God work in us through other people as well as through his presence, his care, to hear what other people say, to listen to them, who say good things into our lives, but more so listen to what God would say and let him speak good thing into our lives as well. And he will restore us, support us, strengthen and establish us. I love that idea that there's so many things. There's restoration, it's giving back that which has been taken, supporting, holding up strengthening so that you're better equipped, and establishing us. I love the idea of being established. It gives a permanence and a sense of solidity. And that's what God works in us and through us. So in our suffering, not to be anxious or not to let our anxiety distract us, but to pass it on to God. And then to recognise that God is still with us. And in faith, respond to that.